What's happening here is we don't even know what the waste, fraud, and abuse is. And so there's an audit going on, and this is exactly what Musk is doing. They're trying to audit.
If there's an audit going on, then why haven't they hired any auditors? Elon Musk and the teenagers he's working with don't have any experience in doing audits. I thought we were concerned with people being qualified for a job. Why would we have a team who did not earn it doing an audit instead of hiring auditors? Imagine an auditor went to school to be able to do that, worked his way up from a junior position to a senior position, who really knows the way to do this, to do it quickly and efficiently, avoiding mistakes. And instead of hiring that person, we hire some drug addict, supposedly genius guy, and a bunch of teenagers, one of whom has been exposed as leaking information from a previous employer. Which is exactly the reason why I said there was a problem with hiring these people that are not vetted without background checks to handle a system that is one of the most critical systems there is. You would not hire or you would not bring on board kids like this to work at a bank, right? A bank whose exposure is limited to its customers. The risk is too great to just bring on some people and not vetting them. No interview process, no background checks. These guys have access to all of our information, the entire country. 300 million people plus. Yet they are less qualified than any auditing team, and they're not vetted. But this guy would like to claim that they're doing a supposed audit. Elon Musk is very smart. Supposedly these kids are very smart. You know what smart people do when they are going to deal with something they don't have experience with? They find someone who does have an expertise in that, right? We're programmers, we know programming, but we're not auditors. Really smart programmers would say, hey, we want auditors to guide us, right? You lead the way with the auditing process, and we'll do the code because that's what we do. Elon Musk, his relevant expertise here would perhaps be in management. He's CEO of several companies, right? So he wouldn't be running the audit. He would be the one seeking the auditor. He would hire a top auditor to do the audit. But for some reason, this drug addict is not doing something that, not even a genius, just a person of, I would even say average intelligence. I would think an average intelligence person tasked with doing an audit, the first thing they'd do is try to find an auditor. Only a moron would be like, oh, I could do this myself.
Audit this and get it in front of the attention of the American people to say, look, we don't want condoms for the Taliban. That was 15 million.
There was no condoms for the Taliban. This is something that has been debunked many, many times. Yet this video that posted 22 hours ago, I don't know when they actually recorded it. Maybe they recorded it before it was debunked. Did he look into this information? Where did he get this information from? Unfortunately, he might have gotten it straight from the White House, but that's what happens when you elect a criminal, and that criminal hires a bunch of criminals to work with him. They might just put out false information about condoms for the Taliban. First, it's $50 million condoms for Gaza. Then Trump says it's $100 million. So the number just changes, doubles. And now condoms for the Taliban get spread around. And it's interesting because condoms for the Taliban would be a much better thing to talk about because that's like scary. Like, oh my goodness, shut it down, shut it all down. It's corrupt. Is that a coincidence that it goes from condoms for Gaza to condoms for the Taliban, which would be much more sexy as a way to smear these organizations? Or was it just by accident? I believe it was health-related stuff for Mozambique, and some of that might include condoms. And to somebody who has a smooth brain, they might be concerned about that as well. because they don't realize that we live on this planet together. And if illnesses spread on another part of the globe, it can end up in America. I mean, we literally just had that happen. Something from China, if you do recall. So you think somebody of average intelligence will understand that there might be some value to preventing the spread of certain diseases in other countries. But of course, if you're childish and selfish, like the typical MAGA cult member, you don't think deeply like that. You just think, oh my goodness, condoms for other countries. What about Americans? We need condoms.
Promotion of atheism in Nepal for 500,000. French LGBTQ programs in West and Central Africa for $1 million, right? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. $200 million 20 days in. I think that the American people do deserve to know that. And I don't think that they would, that this would be front and center or a thing we would.
By the way, if these people were actually interested in where their tax dollars might be going in terms of foreign aid, we don't need Elon Musk or these kids. You could go to foreignassistance.gov, and for example, one might type in Mozambique, apply filter, scroll down, and we see HIV/AIDS, $45 million, and it details information about what they're doing. It's all here. Yet again, MAGA stands for nothing. Pretty much everything coming out of their mouths are lies, right? They're basically a mouthpiece for the establishment, while you have the elites at the very top, the Republicans, who want to distract their voters with nonsense, pretending like, oh, we're doing an audit and we just care about waste and fraud, right? And all MAGA does is just reflect the same thing, right? There's nothing behind it. It's not like they were sitting there, oh, waste and fraud, we got to get rid of this waste and fraud, and therefore looking into these things, right? They weren't looking into these things and bringing it up themselves, right? MAGA didn't bring this to our attention, right? It was a billionaire and elites in the Republican Party who are the ones who are injecting this into their base. Oh, fraud and waste and condoms for Gaza, whatever. Right? If they really cared about the money, they would have been looking into it, and they would have been the ones to bring the topic. This is why I say in the right in this country, it's top down. On the left, it's bottom up. The things that the right is talking about was given to them by the elites and the 1%. They talk about the things that the people at the top want them to talk about. Right? They're not the ones who brought this up.
Be focusing on absent this audit. And I think that more of these government agencies should be audited. Now, Destiny can he can say, well, technically, due to the rule of law, we have judges who are making these impositions and this and that. It's like, yeah, that's fine. But that's all part of the process, too. It's all part of the process of law. The process of law is playing out exactly like it should. Judges are supposed to create injunctions if something illegal is going on, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing wrong.
Saying that the process of law is playing out as it should is like, imagine I'm going around doing a bunch of robberies, bank robberies, and I'm getting charged, right? And then people are upset that I'm going around committing these robberies, and then this moron gets online and says, hey man, the process of law is playing out as it should. As far as the courts, sure, but nobody's complaining about the courts. We're concerned about the robberies, right? The concern is with Donald Trump and his people violating the law, right? Them violating the law is not the way the process is supposed to play out. Trump and his team are supposed to follow the law such that the courts don't have to get involved to correct his behavior.
Wrong, though, with auditing these places. And for the spirit of transparency, I think that leftists are just pissed for no good reason. Like they go, oh, Musk is collecting all these people's information. It's like unelected officials at the DMV are collecting my information. The unelected officials at the Social Security office are collecting my information. Like so many government offices collect my information by people who I definitely didn't elect, and neither did Destiny. They're totally fine with that. But for some reason with these guys, no, that's too much.
That's a good point. I mean, the reason...
That's a horrible point. If you're conservative, you probably think that's a great point. It's not because you're stupid, it's because you're human, and he's preying on a vulnerability that we have as humans, right? In this country, people look at things in a very tribal way. So what's happening right now, with what's being challenged, what people are complaining about, is being done by what you as a conservative would consider to be your tribe. So if your tribe is being attacked, you take it personally. So anybody that's saying anything in defense of your tribe, you're going to accept it without any skepticism. And that's just human nature, right? Anything that gets you away from something that's uncomfortable, your mind is going to, gravitate towards. So someone could come up with a very, very flimsy excuse, and you're going to be like, oh, yeah. So you probably heard that, and you're like, exactly. It's there's so many people in government have information, and now they're worried about it. Da, da, da. It seems logical, right? The reason it seems logical, again, is not because you're stupid. It's because you're not thinking, right? You're just reacting. Someone's saying something that's getting you away from something that's uncomfortable, and you're just reacting to it, saying like, yeah. But if you actually stop and think about it, it falls apart pretty quickly. So the people at the DMV, I would think, are vetted. Background checks, right? They've also gone through an interview process, so they make sure they're qualified for the job, right? So that's number one. That's a big thing. You filter out people like, for example, one of the members of Elon's team previously leaked sensitive information in a previous job, right? That kind of information would have come up in a background check, so you wouldn't have been there in the first place to potentially leak information for the whole country instead of just for one company, right? Massively bigger risk, right? This is failing upward, right? You leak information from a small company, and now they elevate you, right? You did not earn it, right? They elevate you to being able to leak the information for the entire country, right? These are the same people. Again, MAGA, empty vessels, stand for nothing. This whole DEI thing is just a replacement for the N-word, basically. That's why they don't talk about the white women DEI and the white men DEI, right? It's always when someone's brown skin, like the NFL game. You had people at the very top of their craft, and they called it a DEI halftime show, right? Why would a show with people at the very top that just so happens to have a lot of people with brown skin be called a DEI halftime show, unless what I've been saying all along is correct, that DEI just means N-word. I don't want to say the N-word and get myself canceled on social media and lose my job. So I'm going to say DEI, and then when people question me, I'm going to be like, oh, well, no, it's actually because they didn't earn it, and I just think it should be fair. And I'm going to play little games and act like I'm stupid, right? So number one, they will be vetted. Number two, there's something called processes, procedures, and protocols, right? A person at the DMV has a supervisor, and they are monitored, right? They would have rules in place, like, for example, you probably don't have access to copy anything from the machine, right? So you couldn't put a USB drive. I mean, I don't know the rules, right? But these are the typical rules that you would find that are, in normal situations where you're not working for a drug addict and you're not just a rogue group of teenagers that are supposedly geniuses, even though they're acting like morons. So that's a typical thing you'd see in a corporate environment. You would have, no access to a drive or anything that you could copy from the machine. So you couldn't copy stuff and take it home. You're being monitored, whatever you're doing. You have a supervisor monitoring what you're doing. They might have rules like, for example, maybe I need the driver's license number to be able to look something up. So I couldn't just type in someone's name, right? And even if I look up someone's name, it might need it. The way the system is designed could be designed in a way where it's context related. Like, I can't just look up someone's name outside of the context of a specific function of my job, right? So, for example, I might get flagged for simply typing in someone's name and then looking up somebody's information, and it's not associated with a ticket, right? They may, I don't know, again, I don't know, but this is typical protocols that might be in place. There might be something in place where every time you look something up, you have to generate a ticket, and that ticket is showing the reason for it, right? So you're gonna select something like license renewal or something like that, right? So that would stop me from just going in there and like looking up random people's information. And even if I'm looking up random people's information, I can't take it home to do anything with it. So I'm very limited in scope. There's no limits here. There's no supervisory. There's no rules, no protocols. You just have these random kids that haven't been vetted, who have access to all this information. They're downloading stuff. They have access to the code. The guy at DMV doesn't have access to the code, right? So even like all those things that I mentioned, if you have access to the code, you can modify the code and you could break every rule, right? So there's a rule where you have to create a ticket, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to do any of that stuff if I have access to the code, right? If I have access to modify the code, then I could just do whatever the hell I want to do, pull stuff however I want it. If I got access to the database, I can see all the records. A DMV guy doesn't have access to the database unless he's like an IT guy, right? And again, the IT guy is going to be just like everybody else, rules, protocols, management, supervisory. You got none of that going on. You just got a drug addict guy who's not qualified to do audits, right? Who brought in a bunch of unvetted teenagers who don't have any experience with government stuff. None of them have any experience doing government stuff. So you have people who did not earn their positions, right? Who have not been vetted, who are not being constrained, who are not being supervised, who are not working directly with the experts of the system, right? They're just doing whatever. If that's how the DMV was run, we would also have the same kind of problem with it, even though the DMV is going to be limited to information at least that's a subset. When you're at the government, you have everybody's information. That's the biggest risk, which is why you should have the biggest restrictions and rules and controls in place. If I go to the New York DMV, it's probably just going to have information about New York drivers, not drivers across the entire country, right? So even if there's a breach there, it's limited to a subset of Americans, as opposed to Elon Musk is accessing information that affects everyone in this country, right? The stakes are much higher. So bringing up the DMV, completely flimsy and ridiculous excuse. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.